Hello, Goobers. It's me, your favorite Goober, and a potential yap. I don't really know how long it's going to go on for, but I wanted to talk about something real quick before I head to bed. And what I wanted to talk about was my approach to Project Fear in comparison to Project Elemental. For those who are unaware, maybe it's your first time here, hello, welcome. I am currently workshopping a myriad of different creative projects, but the two that have my attention right now is Project Elemental, which is one manga series, and then I have Project Fear, which is another manga series that I want to kind of work on. The project name indicates the power system, in case you're curious, just so you're caught up. Um, I wanted to talk about my approach with Project Fear because I realized that I think I want to throw science to the wind a lot more heavily than for Project Elemental. I really wanted to have a big influence of science when it came to Elemental because it was a detail that I thought would be really cool to lean into. Now, I was going to take many liberties. Trust me, I was not going to force myself to obey everything and every law and all that, right? When it comes to like science and how the world works as we know it, right? I was still gonna have some fun. I was gonna let it be a fantasy story, but I wanted, some of the smaller details to really be. Um, I keep talking in the past sense. Imagine I'm talking in presence because I haven't thrown the project away. Just working on it still. I want it to have a influence from science where it's like, oh, that little detail, that's accurate. I want some like giga nerd who maybe specializes in their field to at least be like, oh, they clearly tried a little bit, they're wrong, or maybe their calculations are off or whatever, but like they kind of had the right idea. And I want that to be the case for like every little thing, um, from ecology, how the world kind of formulated over the years, taking in the influence from that ecology, because in that project there's like animals and monsters that can kind of control elements just as humans can. They're obviously going to be way more primitive, but you could imagine the influence on an ecosystem, on the, terrain, how that might be influenced over the course of thousands of years or something like that, and just how that could shape and affect the land. And that's just one tiny example of a greater, like, idea, I guess, of trying to be influenced by like all the little details. But for Project Fear, when I started it, mind you, this thing is less than 2 weeks old. I think we're just barely approaching, its 2 week mark. And, it's been interesting kind of formulating this new approach because originally, just with, Elemental, Project Fear was also being influenced by science. I was taking a lot of different things into account. And while I still intend to look into the psychology of fear and the science of it, I don't, when it comes to like the powers at least, I think I need to throw away science a little bit because I do want to have a wacky power system and I want to have some wacky monsters. And while there can still be thought put into it, I don't want to be too limited with science, right? And reasoning and logic. I do want to have just some shenanigans. But then this other part of me is kind of like, but maybe that's your signature style, right? Maybe that's what makes your series a little more interesting, that care for that kind of detail. And I suppose, but at least when it comes to like what powers can do, for instance, for Project Fear, the main character, she is afraid of the moon. And immediately, what was going through my mind when discussing with myself the potential different powers she can have it was all based off of what is actually happening with our moon. Okay, well, the moon, it affects Earth's tides. Maybe it has an effect on water. Perhaps she has some ability with water and being able to move it around. Kind of like a rudimentary waterbender, but she maybe couldn't be fully controlling the element, unlike the main character in Elemental, which he is a water user. There's a lot that goes into that, and he can control different states of water, yada yada yada. It's a whole different kind of thing. But if we're just looking at the moon, it can affect the tides. Meh, 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 meh. I wasn't really 100% rolling with that idea. And so I was thinking of something else. Well, what else does a moon do? How does it glow? Why does it look like it's glowing? Well, it's reflecting the sun's light onto it. Maybe I can have something with that, right? With light. Doesn't really feel right. Well, it reflects the sun's light. I haven't done my research. I don't really know if it kind of works like a. I don't know if it works like a mirror. I don't think it does, but I don't know if that's just. I'd have to look into how mirrors work, what reflection of light really means in this case. And then the reason I talk about that is because one of my favorite things are mimics. I love the idea of mimics. They're awesome. Probably my favorite like fantasy creature. I just I just think they're neat. I love them. Oh, what do you mean it's not actually a chest? Oh, what do you mean that's not actually gold and jewelry? What they're little mimic bugs or something like that. I just love me a cool mimic. And so I was thinking, well, mirrors reflect light. The moon reflects the sun's light. Perhaps she can reflect her opponent's fears, right? And so she can use that against them, right? Like, hey, here's your fear. I'm going to put it right back in your face. Or perhaps it can be something more akin to taking in what their power is and mimicking it, right? Uh, but the reason that I originally stopped myself with that idea was because, hey, I don't know anything about how the moon reflects the sun's light. I don't know anything about how mirrors work, so I don't know if this idea makes logistical sense. So I kind of canned it, and I was going, from there, like, what does it mean for the moon to kind of be a basis for a power? I'm just kind of mulling over ideas. Um, and then during this whole process of all those different ideas, I had been coming up with ways to integrate character into that power, into that fear, right? Why is the main character afraid of the moon? Is there a story behind that? And depending on the story, how could I turn that into a reflection of her power, right? Maybe with a little bit of character development, a new power kind of formulates, and from there I can work off of that. I haven't really worked on her a whole lot, so that option has yet to be explored, truth be told. But the reason I mention this and all of that is because, as you can see, the attention to whether or not science was accurate enough to my standards prevented me from doing that mimic idea. And I was kind of just thinking about that. I was like, is this an approach I want to take with this story? And that's where I'm at today. Truth be told, as much as I can tell you that I want to have a wacky story, I also think that it might be a little bit of me as an author's kind of signature style to be that careful with the small details. Um, because I do enjoy it. I do enjoy that kind of stuff. It's really nerdy. It is a great excuse to learn about random things. Like, let's say a character's super afraid of vacuum cleaners and they get consumed, and suddenly you have a vacuum cleaner monster. That kind of gives me an excuse to look into how do vacuum cleaners work. what causes, X, Y, and Z to function, and then I can try to be accurate whilst also having a little dash of spice on there called "This is a fictional story," and I can have some fun, right? While still being slightly accurate with science. So, I don't know. I feel like I might be rambling. It is late for me, but I'm too lazy to make another attempt at this video. So we're gonna roll with it. Thank you for listening. If you did, I will definitely see you tomorrow. I'll be thinking about a lot of topics that I mentioned today going forward here for the next week, most likely. And then, I don't know. We'll take it step by step. But for now, that's everything. Good night and good luck. Bye bye.